The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Don't adjust your screen. There is nothing wrong. You're about to enter a world where the very concept of time is rendered obsolete by the sheer power of entertainment. You're about to enter the Boggis Hour.
Hey, hello, everybody. This is Greg Boggis welcoming you to another episode of the Boggis Hour on remote location in sunny tropical Milford, New Hampshire. I'm very excited to have a guest. He's a filmmaker, photographer, works literally all over the world, and I'm glad to have him here on the show today. A longtime friend of mine, Rex Lint.
Greg, great to be here, man. I'm excited to be on your show, and this is a good walk down memory lane. We've been friends since before I can remember anything, so I'm honored to be here, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, just do a real quick backgrounder on our friendship. Our parents, your mom and dad, Rex and Jan, who are no longer with us, and my mom and Pop, Don and Pauline, met. I think it was through some sort of a Christian family movement. It was called Share, and they did a lot of work in the poorer parts of Nashua, and that's, I think, how we got to know your folks. And there was a whole bunch of people from the Nashua area, and ultimately they decided they wanted to buy some land in Milford, and so the friendship became even longer. They basically pooled their resources and bought some land in Milford, which is still partially here, the Melundi country area. Now it's mostly a conservation area to be opened sometime in the future here in Milford. So we go a long ways back, did things that 7, 8, 10-year-old kids did. And those are obviously some of the great times, great music back in the early 70s and all that, great style. And your folks were wonderful parts of my life, so I really appreciate that they were a positive influence in my life. And
feelings mutual. I mean, those were special memories for me as a kid, being having that kind of communal living situation with everyone, helping each other build houses, and all the holidays that we spent together at the house and on the farm, and going to the quarries and jumping off cliffs, and just a lot of my best memories as a kid were with you and your family. So,
without a doubt. And your father was an artistic influence. Your father was a photographer. So as a kid, I remember at one point he when I was visiting with you, he actually did a bunch of photos of me. And there was one kind of with me in silhouette that my folks had forever hanging up on the wall, and I can't find it now. And then he also took some other really great family pictures. And one was my mother, who had my mother Pauline, who was afraid of the heights, and we were camping up in like Twin Mountain, and we went on this big hike, and there was a big suspended bridge that she walked across, and your dad got a shot of her at the far end of the bridge, looking like she was ready to scream or jump out, run off the bridge. So your dad really kind of was one of the first people to introduce me to photography as an art.
Yeah, that was definitely where I got my start too. I mean, being in the darkroom with my dad as a kid and helping him develop his stuff. And then I would think it was like 6th grade, maybe he got me a camera and I started shooting my own stuff. And it was definitely something I was into in high school. And then once I kind of got out of high school, I moved to Colorado and started ski bumming, and the photography stuff kind of went by the wayside for probably 10 years, where I was just working ski patrol and mountain rescue, and then summer times I was working on the river as a safety kayaker. So just paddling along with river trips and dragging people out of the water, and then as that was going on, I started realizing I could pick up a camera again and start shooting stuff in my adventure life, and it was something that I really enjoyed, and my friends did too, because I was kind of the one guy that would go through the hassle of dragging all this gear with me on these, remote missions and share these photos. And it was always an internal thing for me and my friends. that's kind of where my whole career started for this whole video adventure that I've been on for the last probably 15 years. And so I started shooting some video of my buddies kayaking, and I just had all this camera gear sitting in my double wide trailer in Colorado when I was ski patrolling. And I started taking it out on like when I had days off. Me and all the ski patrol guys, we'd go on a road trip somewhere, and we'd take the camera, we'd do funny skits, and we'd shoot skiing and just the adventure stuff. And at the end of every season, we have a big party where all the ski patrol guys at the end of the season, we all get together and we have just a blowout. And I started making a little movie for the end of the season with like just all the stuff we had shot during the year. And it kind of got to be the kind of the highlight of the end of the season party. And then other buddies would start giving me their footage, and I'd mix it all in, and we'd do stuff around the mountain, and it got to be the main event for sure. And then eventually the marketing guys from Vail came to one of our parties, as we were friends with those guys too, as we worked with them, and they saw the video and they're like, "Oh, it's pretty good. Who's doing your video?" And my boss is like, "Oh, just one of the ski patrol guys." And so I started doing some promo stuff for Keystone Mountain, which is where I was working. And then the corporate guys saw the Keystone stuff, and they're like, "Hey, why don't you quit your ski patrol job and we'll give you a staff job as the video guy for Vail Resorts." And so I quit my job. I got this job for them. They gave me like a pretty good budget, and I bought a bunch of real gear and a studio, and I hired two of my ski patrol derelict buddies to be in my department. And we were working for the corporate guys down in Broomfield, which was 100 miles away. And we were just kind of doing our own thing. And it was, 4 or 5 years of pretty good autonomy within a giant, rigid corporate structure for Vail. But I got along good with the CEO, this guy, Rob Katz, who runs the show. And me and him became kind of buddies. And, Vail had properties in the Caribbean and on the West Coast, and they had all these different kind of properties all over. And so kind of on the Vail dime, I really learned how to shoot and edit, at a higher level, and it was all mostly adventure stuff and hospitality and, in pretty places, just making pretty images and telling stories. And so that was kind of the journey to me, getting going on just the whole video program. And it's been a fun journey, and out of that, it was my springboard into just being a freelance guy. About 5 years into that, I got kind of tired of doing the same thing all the time. And I had made some connections and made a couple phone calls. I just quit one day. I just had you just have those epiphanies where it was like my 10-year party at Vail, and I had been there 10 years ski patrolling, and then 5 years running the cat ski operation, and 5 years as the video guy, and I was just ready for something different. And so I made a couple phone calls and called some of my buddies in LA that I'd met along the way, and freelance just kind of was instantaneous, and I doubled my money, and I got really lucky. I got into a group of guys out of LA that were doing really high-end sports feature work. And so I started working instantly for Fox and ESPN doing feature stuff. So we were going out and shooting stories, and I was working with a lot of really kind of high caliber, high talent producers and other camera guys that had a ton of game and had been classically trained. And so I got this awesome opportunity to learn through those guys. And since then it's been it's been a good mix of hospitality stuff and then sports stuff. And more recently, me and my wife we're doing a lot of conservation stuff, videos for nonprofits and environmental stuff and stuff that I enjoy the ski stuff and the adventure stuff, but as you get older, you kind of want to do some stuff that's a little more relevant to planet Earth. So that's where we're trying to go with it. So yeah, that's kind of the overview.
So it sounds like you did a lot of like self-learning that you with your videos with your friends and stuff like that. That was stuff that you learned to throw together, and so you had some of these fundamentals that you were self-taught, and then as you started to develop into becoming more of a professional, then you start working with professionals and you start to see what they do, and there's you realize that there's a whole different level to art and creativity when you see people that are, you know, Picassos at what they do.
Oh yeah, no, it was definitely a self-taught at the beginning, and just I had a little whitewater video company on the Arkansas River, and so I hired some of my boating buddies, and we just started shooting video. I was out in West Virginia, so the whitewater world. Just back up a second. The whitewater world, like you in Colorado, you work the summer, you work the snow melts in the mountains, it comes out in the rivers, and you play in that water until middle of August, and it dries up. And then the whole world kind of goes to West Virginia, and they have this river called the Gauley River, and they kind of hold their water in this dam all summer. And then in the fall, they do these releases every weekend, and it's a huge business. There's like, I've never seen anything like it. It's total carnage carnival. It's hilarious. It's awesome. There's like, I think they put 10,000 people a day down this section of Class 4 water. That's
Jeez.
like big water. It's beautiful limestone valley with like just incredible white water, and the water's really warm because it's been sitting in the dam all summer, and you get the beautiful fall colors, and it's kind of hurricane season, so you get this like insane monsoon days, and you're out there playing and paddling in this water and meeting all kinds of awesome people. And it's the only thing that's kind of running in North America at that time, so everyone from all over the world comes, all these guides from all over the world come to West Virginia, and it's like some sort of refugee camp. It's like all these like broken down vans and like tent cities, and there's all these people living in these like super squalor in West Virginia. But it's like it's a huge party, and it's so fun. And a big part of the business there was whitewater video, and they'd have like because the rap companies would have a campground, and they'd have a big old barn that they'd turn into a bar, and they'd put a projector TV up on it, and they'd show the whitewater video at the end of the day, and you'd go in there and so I started shooting. I saw that, and I was like, man, that's how I can make a lot more money doing that than I can just being a safety boater. And so I started shooting whitewater video there, and like learning how to edit and yeah, so that was part of the start of me being a video guy too, was that whole whitewater world. So there's like that education of totally learning on my own and having other guys and none of us were classically trained filmmakers. We were all just a bunch of kayaking bums that just wanted to learn how to shoot and make cool videos. And so the tourists would buy them, and we could buy more beer for our friends and put another set of rubber on our, 25-year-old van and drive to our next adventure, and so yeah, it was a good combination of School of Hard Knocks and I think like these guys in LA that I was learning from, like they could do a lot of things that I couldn't do. Like they had money and they had nice cameras and they had lighting and they understood a lot of stuff that I didn't know. So learning from them was awesome. And then I had a lot of skills that they didn't have. Like I could be outside and suffer in really cold weather and fall off mountains and get my camera in places that most of those guys in LA that they didn't have that. That wasn't their background. So I had a niche. I instantly had a niche where I could be a one-man band and be self-sufficient and I think I was tougher than most of the camera guys, where I could go days without food or, I just had a different level of pain threshold for, living in poverty and, that kind of lifestyle. So it was good. I had a niche. I had a spot on my crew in LA to go places that, other guys couldn't go. And also it was a great opportunity for me to learn from a bunch of guys that were super talented. And the production community is a really interesting place, man. People are in my experience, and I think I've been really lucky because I've been on a couple crews where people weren't that cool to each other. But for the most part, my experience in this world has been really positive. Like I've just met some of the greatest people, and you wind up having friends all over the world because you travel everywhere and you have these incredible experiences with people that a lot of times you're never going to see them again, but you always stay in touch and you still ping each other on the social here and there. And, every once in a while I'll get back to Italy or someplace that I've been where there was people that I really enjoyed their company, and you always have like this extended brethren out there. So to me, it's a pretty amazing profession.
Yeah, I find I've been on a ton of film. I've done, mostly local commercials and things like that, some regional, a couple of national commercials, and some extra work and some major films. But it's always fun to see like the crews, because ultimately it's just this really, really it's really practical stuff. You know, the talent
Yeah.
is one thing. The film stuff is like, okay, we need to get this particular thing done right now, and the weather, the science, the machines aren't working with us, and so we have to improvise. And so you have to
Oh, yeah.
be, you know, quick on your toes. You have to be, you know, have a good technical mind, and then you can't be ruffled. If you lose your mind when things go crappy, you know, film isn't the place to do it.
No.
You know, there's
No.
just this moment that you have to capture, and you've got this certain amount of time. And
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's problem solving on the fly a lot. And it can be stressful, you know, if you let it be. But, you know, if you have a good team, like, it's just fun to work with people, especially when stuff gets crazy. That's when it even gets to be more fun, I think, sometimes, you know. And you work with guys, if you wind up working with the same crew all the time, you get these really tight bonds where you start working together. And, you know, I've got a couple of crews that I work with, like, where we've been working together for 15 years, you know. And so you don't even have to say anything anymore. It's like this unspoken connection you have with people where my buddy sees me moving this way to get this shot. He's going to go over there. There's a conversation happening. You see it developing, especially when you're shooting stuff on the fly. You're doing documentary work where you have to kind of, you know, you understand you're in the business. It's that's part of the fun of it. It's just those, you know, every day is different and there's always a new problem to solve. And yeah. And there's always a ton of laughs, you know.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so I watched some of the footage from some of your work, and there's some pretty spectacular locations that you've had the pleasure of working in. And it's just a really incredibly beautiful footage. So what are some of the great spots you've been to film?
Oh man, I'm mostly a mountain person. I mean, that's where I've chosen to spend my life. I live in Crested Butte, Colorado. You know, my house is at 10,000 feet, and I grew up skiing. I mean, I grew up in New Hampshire, but I was always playing in the mountains every chance I got. So for me, the majority of memorable places I've been in a lot of places that are incredible, but I think the places that stick with me the most are probably like the Italian Dolomites is one of them, the Alps in general in Europe, Alaska, and northern British Columbia, coastal British Columbia. I go up there every year to work. I do a trade with the heli ski company up there, so I go up there and me and my wife go and we do just promo videos for them. It's really basic stuff, but we also get to stay and ski for an extra 10 days or so. And we've been doing that for like the last 8 years. And part of that, we go and we stay with the heli ski at this heli ski lodge, and we get to ski and we do some filming. Then we stay in this community, which is this place called Terrace, British Columbia, and it's on the coast. It's super frontier. It's not like a fancy resort. It's like a miners and lumberjacks and oil people. It's industry town, and they have a little tiny ski area there. Yeah, it's full on, and we've gotten there was a crazy story. I sent you the video. It's called Cherry Bowl. And there's this crazy story about this avalanche that happened up there that buried a bunch of people. And these other people came in and saved them. These locals saved these people that were definitely going to die. There was no question. They were remote. The whole party got buried except for one guy who lost all of his gear, and he had nothing to save his friends with. And he's out in the middle of nowhere in these mountains, and he's flipping out because he can't save his friends that just got buried in this avalanche. And these 4 local guys just happened to be skiing across the ridge, saw the avalanche, come down and save everybody. It's like one of the most insane avalanche rescue stories in the history of avalanche rescue stories. Wow. And so me and Kathy went up and we were just up there doing our deal, and we heard the story and like, oh, we want to tell that story. And so we called up all the people involved, and like they were kind of resistant. They're like, we don't know. We kind of already told this story, and we kind of talked them into it. And half the group was in the Yukon and Whitehorse. And so we drove up to Whitehorse to interview these guys, totally on our own dime. We're just like, let's just go up and tell a story. And me and Kathy try and do like at least one passion project a year where we're not getting paid. We just find a story that we really want to tell and we go do it. And so we show up in Whitehorse to interview these 4 people that were the ones that got buried. And we're going to be there if we give ourselves like 4 days to get these interviews and shoot some lifestyle stuff. 3 weeks later, we're still in Whitehorse. We're living in the house with these guys. We're going to their parties. We're hanging out with their buddies. We're like going on bike rides. We're fully broing down with these guys, and they become lifelong friends. Like this, just last year, we went up to Alaska and did a 2-week paddle trip in Glacier Bay, like self-supported kayak mission, where you just go and camp in the woods and paddle every day, and grizzly bears chase you around, and you get to see whales and glaciers. Like we paddled for 3 days. We paddled for 12 days and didn't see a single other person.
Wow.
And we paddled into these inlets and just giant glaciers calving off into the ocean, and so that's just an example of like, and we just got to be friends with those guys, and we got to be friends with the guys that like saved them, and then we get to be friends with their friends, and now we have this whole community up in Terrace where every year we have like 50 friends up there that they all throw a party for us, and we're there and we all hang out. And we did a fundraiser video for them for their little mountain. We did like a kind of narrative story of this Native American or this First Nations DJ guy up there who he's the thread that ties all these different parties together, and they're all going to have it's just fun projects that we can do while we're up there to give back to this community that we really fallen in love with, so. Yeah.
So how does that sounds absolutely fascinating. And telling your story is such a fun thing to do, and when it sometimes it seems like you're never going to be able to do it, and then you get all of this information and you're able to pull it together and create a great story. And that, of course, that's what either regular storytelling, photography, or filmmaking is the ability to tell a story. But I just wanted to touch on like the solitude, and you get out to these places where you're not seeing anybody, and how has that readjusted how you look at yourself and your place in the world and in the world itself?
I think that time to reflect has been something that's been really an important part of my own just self-awareness and defining what's important to me, and being able to create a lifestyle where I can be in those places and making decisions that allow me to, making that the priority, which is hard. It's hard having balance because you got to make a living and you got to pay your bills, and you have opportunities to get more work and better work and pays better, and you get on the treadmill, and it's something I've struggled with, because there's times where I get so busy where I don't get to go out and have fun. I'll work like 6 months straight or just hustling to make a living, and that's, but being outside and being in nature is something that to me has been a huge part of I kind of defined my life. Like those decisions to be in those places, it determines where you live. It kind of determines like how much money you're going to make, because you're not making a lot of money if you're doing these projects that don't pay that good. It determines who you're going to hang out with, like who your friends are, like where you spend your money. And then you find yourself making decisions about just trying to be a responsible citizen on planet Earth, so that you can try and take care of nature and what's left of it. And those quiet times I think are important just for your own, for me anyways. And I think, in this current climate that we're in right now with this isolation and all these people that have to stay at home and where the world slows down. And, man, I think it's a really positive thing for people. I think people struggle with it, but if it goes on long enough, people are going to find this inner quiet. That's going to be something I think they're going to really be surprised at how much they enjoy that. And hopefully it's something that kind of sticks around after the world gets going back to Mach 10,
Right. Yeah, I do think that it has lots of opportunities for people to just kind of be contemplative and not, get caught up in all the hurly-burly of the world and kind of reassess what is important, and a lot of times what's important isn't, the 2 jets or the, millions of dollars in your account. It's being with your family. It's having some time with people you love. And now that's
and time to just do some things that aren't money related, things that you just like picking up a hobby or doing like picking up your guitar you haven't touched in 4 years or whatever it is,
Right.
Yeah.
Before we go, I wanted to touch bases on director, photography. You work with a guy named Corey Rich. Tell me about working with him.
Corey Rich is arguably one of the most famous adventure photographers in the world. And when I met Corey, he was straight up stills photographer guy and super plugged in. Like he was living rock star style. He's an amazing person. He's big charisma. He's the nicest guy you ever want to meet. He's the best storyteller. He can get up in front of a room and like just everyone wants to hear what he has to say. And he, as accomplished a photographer as he is, he's zero ego and a big heart. And and when I met him, he was seeing the writing on the wall about where photography was going as far as trying to make a living doing it, and he saw that he needed to start shooting motion and start doing video and become something bigger than just a adventure photographer. And so me and this guy, Dane Henry, were both Vail guys. And the three of us got together and started doing some projects for Nikon together, right when he first started doing this. And the first one that we kind of really did together was called Why. And it was a story on three or four different athletes, and why they do what they do. And one of those guys was Alex Arnold, who's gone on to be a very famous climber. He's the guy that climbed El Cap with no ropes, and everyone knows that guy. And so me and Dane did a couple videos for him, and because he was so connected, he was connected with all the big brands because he had shot for everybody. He'd shot adventure stuff, but he'd shot for anyone you can think of. And some of his bigger accounts were, Apple and Microsoft and Samsung and like big time companies that like had big budgets. And so he instantly plugged into that world, and he takes me along on missions from time to time. We still work together probably 2 or 3 or 4 times a year, and I do some edits for him, and we travel and we still do stuff. And it's usually not as gnarly as it used to be. Now we're doing stuff for Apple and stuff that's a little more kind of studio based sometimes, or, it's not as extreme sports focused, but it's, he's been very successful in what he's doing. He just published a book that's like a total hit, and yeah, he's got a million stories that are just totally entertaining, and I really feel lucky to have him as one of my friends. Yeah.
Cool. Well, so I think we're just about out of time. Is there anything else that you've got looking at before we go that you're planning on in the future, or we're just getting through this whole COVID thing?
It's just good to see you, man. It's good to reconnect with you. In these times of COVID, I think it's important for people to reconnect with these relationships they have in their lives and with people that they have connected with in the past. And so I really appreciate you reaching out. And this has been we've been trying to do this for a long time, and I'm stoked that we're getting it done. So thanks so much.
It finally happened. So this was an interview with my friend, filmmaker, photographer, man about Vail in Colorado and the world, Rex Lint. And I've been Greg Boggis, and this is the Boggis Hour. See you next time. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the Boggis Hour, email us here at theboggushour@gmail.com.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.